Well, it looks like the Russians are interfering again, and this time Hillary Clinton herself has the scoop on it. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, Hillary Clinton, during an interview with a podcaster, suggested that the Russians are grooming Democrat presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard the way they groomed or the way they used Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, in the last presidential election cycle. In other words, she said Jill Stein was in effect a Russian agent. Now, Tulsi Gabbard was not fond of this characterization and in fact hit back at Hillary Clinton on Twitter. And this is what I want to get your reaction to. Tulsi Gabbard said that Hillary Clinton was the queen of warmongers, the embodiment of corruption, the personification of rot that has sickened the Democratic Party for so long. Just gut reaction to this, Bill.
Well, my gut reaction came from the first fragment of the first sentence, maybe the first 4 or 5 words of the first sentence. Hillary Clinton was doing a podcast. She wasn't being interviewed on 60 Minutes. She wasn't doing The View. She wasn't special on, she was doing a podcast. That's what she's been reduced to. And
I would say elevated to. And who watches 60 Minutes anymore? But millions and millions of people are listening to podcasts.
What was the name of the podcast?
I don't have that on hand. It could have been a very famous one, though, that makes a lot of money.
Could have been a very famous one that makes a lot of money. But I suspect not. Hillary made a statement not too long ago saying that, when there was some talk, the most recent round of fantasy where there was some talk about her getting into the 2020 race, and she said, I could beat Donald Trump again, like she beat him last time. Like the whole thing was just completely, a Russian fix or a result of this or a result of that, or it was unfair that somebody else entered the presidential election and stole her votes because the person who entered in 2016 undoubtedly had no desire to want to run for president, and the people that voted for that person didn't either. She just did it because the Russians wrote her a check, and so off you go. Hillary Clinton is insane, and she's crossed the line. And I think quite a while ago, I think if you were to give her a standard test, and a detailed standard test, I think you would find Hillary Clinton to be a sociopath or a psychopath. And I mean that in the clinical definition of the word. I don't mean that as she's a psychopath. No, there's a definition of what a psychopath is. And when I said sociopath, I meant to say psychopath. Psychopaths are people who are often very high functioning, and their most noticeable attribute is their sense of narcissism is so great that they essentially don't see other people as having any real existence compared to theirs. And for Hillary Clinton to have been defeated twice by people who aren't even real people, because they're not Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and then Donald Trump, I think she's gone completely barking nuts. And I think most people understand that. I think most Democrats understand that. There's not been a groundswell of, if Hillary was robbed, we got to get her back in the saddle again. On the contrary, most Democrats seem to be wishing she would just shut up and go away.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard wants her back in the saddle again. In fact, Tulsi said, "Why instead
I may even vote for her."
Yeah, Tulsi said that Hillary Clinton had this statement by Hillary Clinton. By the way, it was on David Plouffe's podcast, Campaign HQ. Plouffe was the campaign manager for Barack Obama's, I believe, 2008 run for the presidency.
So literally hundreds of people listen. But go ahead.
Countless dozens. But Tulsi Gabbard is basically saying, now that Hillary has said this, we know who has been trying to destroy Tulsi Gabbard's reputation. It's been Hillary through her proxies. And she says to Madam Clinton, why don't you get into the race and fight for yourself instead of doing this through proxies?
Well, finally, a Democrat who I could vote for without having 100% misgivings. I'd probably be down to 97% misgivings. She's absolutely right. And I'm glad to hear it coming from the left. I'm very glad to hear it. And I hope and expect, as we've talked about essentially on and off for the last year or so, that when the thing is all the dust has settled for the Democratic nomination, that either Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or whoever, the radical ring, radical wing is. They go off and take their arugula with them and launch a third party bid. Or if they end up owning it, then maybe the Democrats try to take somebody a little more reasonable and launch a third party bid. But in any event, the third party candidate cost George Bush the election, George Bush the elder, against Bill Clinton. And I think that the third party candidate in this upcoming election is going to have more leverage, because I think that there are just a whole lot more unattached pieces than there were in 2016. I think everybody who was a Democrat, everybody, whether they liked her or not, had been preparing themselves for President Hillary Clinton for 30 years. And so with her gone, I think there's a lot more loose pieces floating around. And I think that somebody running a third-party campaign could actually get enough traction to be the margin of victory. Although I think that still looking at it, I think Donald Trump's in pretty good shape.
So it's beginning to sound, Bill, like you're in cahoots with the Russians trying to groom Tulsi Gabbard for a third-party presidential run here, because that's the allegation, is that somehow the Russians they've drilled down into the field and found the one that they want. Tulsi Gabbard is going to be the one who's going to throw enough votes away from the eventual Democratic nominee that once again
cost
Donald
them
Trump
the election
will be elected. Yeah.
Let me just say this. If Donald Trump wins in 2020, Hillary will have an explanation for why he lost.
And why he won.
I'm sorry, yes, excuse me, beg your pardon, for why he won. She will have an explanation for why he won. The explanation will have something to do with external forces, because then she and the 2020 loser will be able to commiserate on this and talk about this incredibly corruptive outside force that is causing the American people to not vote Democrat forever. And that's the pathology. That's the manifestation of her psychopathy. She's unable to accept the fact that she lost that election because nobody likes her. She's the center of the universe. How can anybody not like her? And so she will have to come up with, she is psychologically required to come up with a reason for why this happened that had nothing to do with her. And that's the bottom line of it, Scott. That is the bottom line. And that's behind the whole Mueller probe, and it's behind the whole everything. It's all of it. All of it is driven by people who cannot accept that Hillary Clinton lost the election. And the one person who can accept that least of all is Hillary Clinton. And all of this would be unbearably annoying, and it is, until you come back to realize that if there is either a divine justice or just plain karma or just good luck, it is impossible for me to imagine a torture worse for Hillary Clinton than the one she's putting herself through by not being able to accept this. And it couldn't happen to a nicer person.
Let me give you the exact language, by the way, and I think you'll find this instructive. This was what Hillary Clinton said in that David Plouffe podcast. Quote, "I think they've got their," meaning the Russians, "I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's a favorite of the Russians." Later on, NBC News asks Mrs. Clinton if that was a reference to Tulsi Gabbard, because the Clinton people have said she didn't mention anybody's name. Anyway, no. So the NBC News says, well, was that a reference to Tulsi Gabbard? A Clinton spokesperson responded, not Hillary herself. A Clinton spokesperson responded, "If the nesting doll fits."
Nesting doll as in...
the Russian Matryoshka dolls.
Well, again, while all of this is deeply disturbing in the way that watching a car crash is disturbing, or watching a train going downhill too fast and you know it's just going to go off the rails, that's disturbing too. While all of this is disturbing, on a sheer practical, what's good for America angle, then I say more and more and more of this, please. More and more and more. We'll take everything. We'll buy the entire lot.
It almost looks like, Bill, there's finally, and somebody on the Bill Whittle member blog this week posted a picture and a little article, and it was a meme that was generated from a photograph I'm sure you've seen, where there's a whole group of people who are giving the German Sieg Heil salute, and there's the one guy who's standing in the middle of that crowd who is not giving that salute. And I'm wondering in this case if Tulsi Gabbard is kind of the first person to basically say, you know what? Enough of kowtowing to the Clintons. We don't have to take this. She's just a woman. She's not even running for president. And if this will begin a cascade of a kind of rejection of that whole Clinton dynasty idea.
Well, the Clinton dynasty is rapidly turning to dust, and God knows it's happening 30 years later than it should have if it had been a normal creature of nature and not some hell spawn animated by forces of darkness beyond our comprehension. But I think that the Clinton luster has not just faded, it's gone. People were screaming, "You're a rapist," to Bill Clinton at a speaking event. They canceled their book tour because nobody was showing up. The Clinton Foundation, as I understand, went bankrupt because nobody was paying for influence anymore because they didn't have any influence anymore. And so all across the board, the Clintons are going out in a blaze of mediocrity. And I suspect that her final departure will be so meh that that you won't even think more about it than you will for last day's football scores. Oh, does that happen really? The Chargers lost? No kidding. Yeah, she's gone. Okay, this is entirely her creation, and every day that goes by goes to further indicate what a horrifically flawed person she is. And to the degree that she is as flawed as she is, wants to stay involved in Democratic politics and take shots from the sidelines, that's nothing but good news for us. Nothing but good news for us. Because number one, it reminds people of the bullet that we dodged in 2016. No matter what we may think of Trump or his actions, there can't be a conservative, well, there are, I've read about them, who would have preferred Hillary Clinton to this situation. So she continues to snipe from the sidelines, and that means that conservatives get more fired up. And I think most Democrats, I think it's pretty clear, you'll notice none of them have invited her to her campaign rallies, right? I mean, you would think that one of them, I don't know, the front runner who's...
Hey, Bernie Sanders just got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's endorsement. And so I'm sure Hillary is sitting by the phone.
Waiting for the phone, yes. You would have thought, for example, that the former Vice President of the United States would have had the former Secretary of State of the United States and President, to the degree that he can free himself from his vacation homes, out there on the road with him, stumping for him. But turns out neither one of those people are there. Now, Obama would do Biden a lot of good. And why Biden is out there without Obama ought to tell you something about Biden. But nobody wants to touch Hillary. Not even people who run extremely well-known podcasts. Hillary Clinton was on Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, and that was kind of a get before the election in 2016. But after the election of 2016, I don't think she could get arrested, if you'll pardon the expression.
So I'm over at the Patriot Post, which is some folks who are co-sponsoring our programs, and we're co-sponsoring their content. We're kind of doing a share
great
thing
guys.
here.
Yep,
yes,
they're great guys.
And the lead story as we record this says Hillary, poster child of Russian conspiracy theories, and it's got this great picture. You got to go to the Patriot Post. We'll put a link in the description below here of Hillary Clinton with frankly the nicest smile I've ever seen on her face, with a Russian flag in the background and a tinfoil hat snugly on top of her head. And it's a story about this very topic that we're covering here. So to get more information about this, you might want to explore the Patriot Post. Go ahead, Bill.
I would just simply say this too. I think this is a really important point. I think it's absolutely true. Every time Hillary opens her mouth about Russia, is a way of throwing the spotlight off of her own collusion with Russia. Every time that Joe Biden would talk about Trump being involved with the Ukraine was a way of throwing the media spotlight away from Hunter's relationship with Ukraine. And one of the things that I've noticed about the last 3 years is if you look at the people who are accusing Donald Trump of doing something, and then you look at what they are accusing him of doing, chances are excellent that you will find that the person doing the accusing has got their fingers very, 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 very deep into that very same cookie jar, and they continue to do it, even though evidence of Donald Trump having done so doesn't seem to exist in a whole lot of abundance, does it?
You know, it was just a few years ago that we had those TVs that they called reverse projection TVs, and it sounds a little bit like that. We're grateful to the folks not only at the Patriot Post, but to the members at BillWhittle.com who've made this program possible. They are the ones who are contributing on a monthly or annual basis to make sure that we can continue to generate these shows, some 4 dozen of them, per month that go around the world, and people get to hear ideas that they will not hear in the mainstream media and frankly may not hear any other way because friends are sharing these videos with friends. If you want to share these videos now, you can actually do that from BillWhittle.com. We've opened up the website a little bit to make it easier for our members to share. And if you'd like to explore becoming a member, go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.